us through that framework so that we can make sure everyone's familiar with it, so that then we can start deconstructing that framework later on?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yes, as Sonali mentioned, Jeremiah, Ao Yang, and I co-authored this paper. We also had input from my business partner, Eric Peterson, as well as Charlene Lee of Altimeter, and other researchers working with us. And really, what we decided was that the marketplace didn't have a good framework for measuring social media. Everyone was kind of doing their own thing. There was a lot of different experimentation going on with how do you measure, really no consistency that we recognized whatsoever. Marketers really were stumbling blindly into social media. A CEO would say, we need this, a marketer would go do it, and there really wasn't a big picture strategy that was involved. What we recognize is that this Wild West mentality wasn't going to win us wasn't going to get us ahead with regards to measuring social media. So one of the things that we did is we collaborated and we said, let's bring the strategic expertise of Altimeter Group together with the strategic expertise in measurement that Web Analytics Demystified offers and come up with the framework that we could put out to the marketplace. And one of the first things we did in this endeavor was to define what we called social marketing analytics. So for us, it was about bringing these two things together. What are we talking about here? We wanted a standard or a common definition, and we crowdsourced it. I wrote a blog post, we sent it out via Twitter. Many people contributed to the definition, and I'll just read it for you quickly. Social marketing analytics is the discipline that helps companies measure, assess, and explain the performance of social media initiatives in the context of specific business objectives. And that last part's really important, because everything that we do within this framework is in the context of specific objectives. And really that's how we built it. We built it based on a pragmatic approach. It wasn't just go out and do this. It's social media is not this three-headed hydra that you have to conquer. It's similar to business practices that you have elsewhere in your business. And we took this very pragmatic approach saying, what are your business goals? And from there should stem your social media objectives. And then from there, your measures of success. And then finally, your operational tactics. So this is nothing revolutionary. It's pretty standard business management type stuff. Figure out where you want to get to, and then figure out how you're going to be able to meet those goals. What we did do that was different, and we actually went out on a limb here because we wanted this to be a forward-thinking piece and something that was going to rouse some people, and frankly, it did. What we set out to do was actually define what the objectives and those measures of success were. So for us, we looked at 4 common objectives. The first was fostering a dialogue. In addition to that, promoting advocacy, facilitating support, and spurring innovation. We saw these as the 4 key objectives that most marketers have when they're going into social media. Of course, there are others. Generating awareness, deriving revenue, finding customer satisfaction or improving satisfaction. There's lots of other objectives that you could have. We started with 4 that we believe to be basic to social media marketing. And then from there, what we did is we actually built out the key performance indicators, those measures of success, and actually put a stake in the ground by saying these are the calculations, these are the formulas by which you can measure these objectives. So some of these were common. We used share of voice was one of them, conversation reach, but we also looked at things like advocate influence. We looked at issue resolution rate and idea impact were things that we looked at. And across the board, really what we expected this methodology to be challenged. We put it out there and said, here's a starting point. Take this and make it your own. Do with it use it productively, but use it and expand upon it. And really to think about the framework, what I encourage people to take away, or what both Jeremiah and I, as co-authors of the paper, encourage people to take away, is that it starts with revisiting tradition. The business practices that you have, don't abandon them when you go into social media. Bring those with you. Make learning your primary goal. All of the objectives that we developed, we came to the realization that they all involved learning. Learn from your customers. Listen, learn about their actions, learn about their behaviors. In addition, we also agreed that defining your requirements first and then selecting a vendor was really important, because a lot of times vendors will try to shoehorn you, and nothing against vendors, I love vendors, but they'll try to shoehorn you into their solutions. So understand what you need first before going out shopping. And then you need a playbook. You need a strategy for how this happens. And then, of course, as I mentioned, really making the framework your own. The best that we could do is put something out there as a starting point and then hope that businesses will adopt it and really transform it to mean something for your business. Because there is no cookie cutter approach here. For measuring social media, it does rely on how it can apply to your specific businesses. Whether you're a Fortune 50 company, whether you're a nonprofit, whatever type company you're working for, you need to be able to adapt it to your needs. So that's the basics of the framework.
Thanks, John. Now, Seth, you have your approach incorporates a lot more of your PR and your public relations experience. And a couple of years ago, or just last year, I think it was.
Just this year.
Just this year. You published a paper for IPR, which is the Institute for Public Relations, on using web analytics to measure the impact of online media on business. Mm-hmm. So can you walk everybody through that, please?
Yeah, sure. So it might make sense to give a little context to the paper before I describe it. So since the mid-90s, context analytics and a lot of other sort of PR measurement companies have been conducting content analysis on print and broadcast media. And by content analysis, I just mean reading, literally having analysts or humans read coverage, trying to identify specific messages, sentiment towards the company, products, calculating share of voice, and those types of metrics. And starting in about 2005, 2006, a lot of our clients started asking us to do the same kind of thing, do the same content analysis on social media, which at the time was mostly just blogs and forums. And I think for the most part, that's still where a lot of social media measurement is. So it's just basically the same old content analysis, looking for share of voice, looking at sentiment, and that sort of thing. Only instead of doing it for, in the New York Times and in broadcast, they're doing it on blogs and Twitter and Facebook. For PR, this has always been a bit of a problem for them measuring their efforts this way, because when executives ask PR professionals to demonstrate the value of their efforts, and they go into a meeting with the CMO and they say, oh, well, we have 33% share of voice, or 22% of our coverage was positive this quarter, the CMO is likely to sort of wonder, well, where's the financial value in that? What does that actually mean for the business? And this is where the paper and I think Web Analytics fit in. So, now that a lot of media is appearing online and social media is appearing online and every company has a website, many of them actually can track some sort of business goal through their website. Even if it's not sales, it can be sales leads or something like that. You can start to connect traditional media and social media posts directly to goals that are happening online, either to traffic or in some cases conversions or actual revenue. The paper that I wrote for the IPR kind of goes over two broad methodologies on how to actually do this. The first is just calculating ROI-like metrics and doing sort of an accounting to figure out what the financial value is of social media efforts. The second involves more sort of predictive modeling, looking at all of the attributes and coverage that actually tend to predict conversion rates and traffic to the website. For both of these types of methodologies, the sort of steps are pretty similar. So, and again, I think this is probably more revolutionary for PR than it is for marketing, but basically you go into your web analytics tool, let that be Site Catalyst or Google Analytics, download all of the referring domains or URLs. So you get a list of all the stories that drove visitors to your site. And then you clean out all of the mistagged ads and search results and so on. And then you take all those and then you apply the same kind of content analysis that I would say PR measurement's been doing for over a decade to all those different posts. And you figure out, using multivariate testing or statistics, what types of messages and topics and sentiment and so on actually seems to be driving visits to your website and conversions. And the methodology, it sort of has roots for me in medical epidemiology, where you have populations of people and you take genetic data and you take demographic data, environmental data to try to predict what are the risk factors in developing disease. And it's also actually really similar to what financial lenders and banks use to determine people's creditworthiness. Taking a bunch of spending behaviors and trying to figure out which ones are actually going to predict whether or not people default on their loans. So, although the variables are very different for all these different types of sort of approaches, the sort of underlying statistics and the research kind of logic is very similar. You're basically just trying to figure out what are the types of sites and what are the types of posts and what's the content that's being written in social media that's actually being effective at driving people and ultimately conversions for your company.
Thanks, Seth. So all of this is great, and you have a great framework, John, and you have a great framework, Seth, but how do people actually put this into practice? Because that's one of the things that we see. We talk a lot about, well, this is the right way to do something, but oftentimes practitioners who are dealing with the day-to-day nitty-gritty of it are going, okay, well, these are words. How do I actually make this happen? So can you talk us through that, each of you, and give us some examples, maybe?
You want to start?
Sure. So the first company that I did this for was a company called FICO, and they're the company that makes the credit scoring algorithms that lending institutions and the credit rating agencies like Equifax and TransUnion use. And they have one, they're mostly B2B, but they have one consumer-facing product, which is on a site called myfico.com, where consumers can go and purchase their credit scores. And it's actually a great case study for this sort of thing because all of myfico.com sales happen on myfico.com. So there's no offline behavior to really track, and almost all their marketing is online. So what we did for FICO is we looked at a year of all of their earned media coverage, basically anything that was unpaid media, meaning not paid search, not advertisements that were driving traffic and sales at myfico.com. And we did our sort of standard content analysis, and we pulled a bunch of panel-based data, like demographic data about the sites that were referring traffic and the unique monthly visitors at these sites and so on. And we ran a series of regression analyses to see what types of posts and sites were actually effective. And what we found was really interesting. So among other findings, one of the things we found was that posts that were very long, that appeared in sites with slightly mature female audiences, produced incredibly high conversion rates, sometimes hovering around 17 to 18%. And this was complete news to the marketing team. They had been focusing a lot of their outreach on sort of financial blogs and so on, and they'd actually been sponsoring some blog posts on real estate websites like Trulia and Zillow. And in our analysis, we found that although a lot of these real estate like Trulia and Zillow were driving a lot of traffic to myfico.com, they weren't producing any sales. So we presented our results to the myfico social media marketing team, and they completely restructured their outreach efforts to focus on more lifestyle magazines, online magazines, and social media sites, things like goodhousekeeping.com and Sunset Magazine and Oprah. And since they've done that, the conversion rates have increased dramatically without requiring any additional spend, really. So that's one really successful example. This is also a really new methodology. So although we're actually doing this for other large companies, so we're doing this type of work for Cisco, for Visa, for Sybase, and a couple of other smaller companies. And it's still pretty new, so I don't have any good case studies in terms of having tangible results from that yet, but should pretty soon.
Thanks.